The sun rose slowly over the Uinta Basin, bleeding orange and gold across the jagged horizon. Mist clung to the low sagebrush and bare earth like a memory that didn't want to fade. Blind Frog Ranch, nestled in this enigmatic slice of Utah, stirred under the weight of another day filled with questions. Questions that refused to be answered, that only grew darker with every attempt to solve them. Duane had been up for hours. He didn't sleep much these days. The land had a way of stealing peace from a man, not just because of the rumors or the strange happenings. The buried treasure, the lights in the sky, the whispers of ancient curses, but because it demanded obsession. The kind that made a man stare at ground-penetrating radar long after midnight or crawl into tunnels that were never meant to be disturbed. Today was supposed to be a routine check. One of the older tunnels, first discovered when the initial digs were done years ago, had shown some new signs of instability. Cracks had appeared in the rock wall, just past the third chamber. What worried Duane wasn't the shifting geology, it was the smell. A faint, chemical reek like rusted metal soaked in vinegar, strong enough to make the crew complain, strong enough to raise questions. They'd brought out the meters, oxygen sensors, hydrogen sulfide monitors, and portable gas detectors. The first sweep was inconclusive, readings erratic. Duane didn't trust inconclusive. He'd seen what that meant around here. Inconclusive meant danger. Inconclusive meant, sometimes, that the land was watching. The entrance to the tunnel yawned open like a throat, cold air pushing out in damp, rhythmic breaths. The walls were jagged, clawed by hand tools and erosion, carved by time or something older. There were no lights in the tunnel save the ones they brought in themselves, long-necked flashlights, headlamps, and battery-powered lanterns that cast flickering shadows too large for the narrow space. Duane descended first. His boots scraped against the gravel and packed dirt, the sound swallowed almost instantly. The deeper he went, the less the outside world seemed to matter. The surface, the sun, the sounds of wind and birds and human voices, it all faded. Only the whisper of his breath and the crunch of his steps remained. He moved carefully, methodically, his eyes scanning the monitor clutched in one hand. The air was thin, slightly off. The carbon dioxide levels spiked once, then stabilized. Not enough to panic. Not yet. But then came the metallic taste. It wasn't imagined. It coated the back of his throat like iron dust, like blood in a copper cup. He paused. His light flickered once, dimmed, then returned. Battery error? Maybe. Or maybe something else. He took another step, and the gas meter screamed. Red. Levels beyond safe. Hydrogen sulfide. High concentrations. Then the oxygen meter began to drop, percentage by percentage, as if the tunnel were inhaling his breath. He turned to retreat. The light failed. Darkness took the tunnel like a flood. He blinked, once, twice, trying to force the blackness to resolve into something, anything. But the only thing he could sense was the rising weight in his chest, like sandbags laid atop his lungs. His knees weakened. His breath came short and sharp, like he'd climbed a mountain, but he was underground, buried in rock and secrets. Somewhere behind him, the tunnel exhaled. It was a sound like steam escaping a pressure valve, hissing and wet. The gas was moving. Not passive. Not random. Like it had waited for him to be far enough in. Deep enough to be isolated. He staggered forward, one hand dragging against the wall, fingers digging into damp stone. Every breath now tasted worse than the last. Like rot and ozone. His muscles ached. Coordination began to fail. The floor tilted, though the tunnel was level. Vertigo. He dropped to one knee. Then collapsed entirely. Somewhere above, faintly, the radio crackled. but it was distant, blurred, like shouting through a snowstorm. He reached for the device on his belt, but his fingers wouldn't close around it. The darkness pressed in harder now. It wasn't just the absence of light. It was the presence of something else. A pressure. A sentence Duane knew, dimly, that he was dying. The gas wasn't just an environmental hazard, it was a trap. Set long ago. By whom, or what, he couldn't guess. But the evidence was everywhere. Sealed chambers, anomalous readings, things that shouldn't be underground. This tunnel wasn't made for people to find. It was a vault. Or a grave. Time slipped sideways. Minutes became seconds or hours. There was no way to know. Then motion. Rough hands grabbed his shoulders. He was being pulled, dragged across stone. Cool air brushed his face. Someone had reached him. Blurry lights danced in his eyes, too bright, too late. He gasped, but the air was thin and what had nearly killed him. Cleaner. Above, someone had deployed the emergency fans. The tunnel was venting. The gas was dispersing, reluctantly, as though leaving behind a prize it hadn't quite managed to claim. Outside, the sun had moved across the sky. Time lost underground was always disproportionate. He lay on the ground, lungs heaving, vision swimming. Medics rushed in, oxygen masks at the ready. He didn't protest. Couldn't. They treated him on site, stabilizing his vitals. His skin was pale, lips tinged blue, eyes bloodshot from the exposure. But he was alive. Barely later, they would analyze the air samples. The readings would show an unstable combination of hydrogen sulfide, methane, and another compound, unidentifiable, organic in nature, with no direct match in any known chemical database. It wasn't naturally occurring. It wasn't man-made either. Something in between. They would review the footage. Some cameras had failed at the same moment the gas meters spiked. Power drained simultaneously from unrelated sources. Electromagnetic interference. None of it explainable by standard science. Duane recovered over days, but something in him changed. He became quieter. Not withdrawn, just more observant. Like he'd seen something in the dark that hadn't left him. Something more than gas. A presence. The crew was shaken. Some refused to go back underground. Others began to wear full hazmat gear, even for shallow surveys. The tunnel was sealed. For now. But they all knew it wasn't over. Blind Frog Ranch had always been strange. The tunnel had been sealed temporarily after strange gas plumes had halted excavation weeks earlier. What started as a safety precaution had evolved into something deeper, a suspicion that the underground system wasn't just hazardous. It was reactive, as though the ranch itself objected to their digging. Still, the pressure to push forward hadn't eased. Something valuable was hidden beneath the surface. Duane could feel it in his bones. This land held secrets, ancient, well-buried, and fiercely protected. Armed with fresh filters, portable monitors, and a double-layered gas mask, Duane descended into the dark. The ladder groaned softly under his weight, each step taking him deeper into the womb of the earth. Lights strung along the upper tunnel walls flickered as he passed, struggling to keep pace with the encroaching gloom. The first chamber, though narrow, felt almost ceremonial. Walls too smooth to be shaped by chance, patterns scratched faintly into the stone like warnings or forgotten prayers. Duane barely glanced at them. He had a mission today. Inspect the air quality near the unexplored subshaft to determine if another entry was possible. As he moved further into the underground corridor, the air thickened, not just in composition but in character. The scent of copper and sulfur became stronger, more pungent, more deliberate. The gas detectors began their low, steady hum, a noise that Duane had learned to both respect and dread. Every chirp, Every blinking light was a decision point: proceed or retreat. Past the third junction, the ground began to change. The gravel underfoot gave way to packed clay, darker and oddly sticky, as if dampened not by water, but by time. Here, the rock was cracked along sharp angles, some wide enough to insert a fist. Something had fractured this place from within. The monitor Duane held let out a sharp spike of noise, hydrogen sulfide levels surging past safety thresholds. Then a second reading dropped unexpectedly. Oxygen was being displaced. Rapidly, he turned, quickly, to begin his retreat. But as he did, the air shifted. Not a breeze, not a draft, a push. A dense, invisible pressure that seemed to exhale from the tunnel itself. The hiss was faint, yet unmistakable. The stone around him seemed to tighten. The gas mask, thick and fitted, suddenly felt inadequate. A cloying sweetness crept into Duane's throat, wrong and suffocating. The world around him tilted. His knees buckled, the ground slamming into his side before he fully registered the fall. His vision narrowed. Alarms on the monitor shrieked, but the sound was now distant, as though muffled underwater. The light on his helmet flickered again, sputtering to dimness. And then, silence. Duane's mind swam in darkness, not unconscious yet, but disoriented, his lungs strained. The mask filters were compromised or overwhelmed. The gas was winning. Somewhere within that darkness, another sensation emerged. Not physical, not chemical. A presence. Watching. Listening. As though the land had become aware of his intrusion, of his defiance, and had moved to neutralize him. He tried to crawl. One arm moved sluggishly, driving his body inches toward the main shaft. The other arm remained limp. Numbness spread across his chest. His heart pounded, erratic. His throat burned. No breath reached his lungs. The taste of rust and ozone lingered on his tongue.